Dear friends, this is Deepak, and I'm sorry I haven't been with you the last 2 days. I was traveling right across the country and doing things back to back, so I didn't get a chance to connect. But here I am again, and I'm speaking to you from Santa Barbara, doing an event today for the World Business Academy and a fundraiser as well for them. You know that you can send me questions at the following email, info@jayo.com. Once again, info, I-N-F-O, at Jayo, J-I-Y-O, info@jayo.com. And your questions end up in a queue, and then I answer them in the order that they are received. So if you haven't had your question answered, be patient. Know that you already have all the answers, and also know that I will get to your questions in the order that they come in, and I do my best to answer a question every day. So I will continue to do that. And today I'm taking a break from answering questions to talk to you about a very special book. And here it is. It's called A Mind at Home with Itself. That's the special book that I want to talk to you about. It's written by Byron Katie with her husband Stephen Mitchell. Now, both Byron Katie and Stephen Mitchell have been long acquaintances of mine. Byron Katie has also spoken at the Chopra Center for Wellbeing, and she gives courses all over the world. Byron Katie gives, and she's helping many people all across the world. You can actually reach her. I'll give you the information soon. But she sent me this book, which I read in less than 2 days. Once again, the book is A Mind at Home with Itself, Byron Katie with Stephen Mitchell. Okay, so now let me tell you a little bit about Byron Katie. You know that I have mentioned several methods for ultimately what spiritual traditions call enlightenment, or knowing your true self. And these methods include self-inquiry, transcendence, vipassana, awareness of mental space, awareness of relationship, awareness of the experience that we call the body, awareness of sensory perception, awareness of images, on and on. But one of the well-known methodologies, at least in the Indian tradition, is self-inquiry, or self-reflection that ultimately leads to understanding your true self, or the source of all existence. Let me tell you that this book is an amazing course in self-inquiry based on 4 questions that were created by Byron Katie. And I'll tell you what those 4 questions are if you promise to read the book too. But here is a little history about Byron Katie. And this happened apparently in February 1986, when Byron Katie was 43 and had checked herself into a halfway house for women with eating disorders. At that time, she was taking a lot of codeine and drinking to excess, and was overweight and so on. So here's a passage from the book. One morning, about a week at the halfway house, Katie had a life-changing experience. As she lay on the floor, she didn't feel worthy enough to sleep in her bed. A cockroach crawled across her ankle and down her foot. She opened her eyes, and all her depression and fear, all the thoughts that had been tormenting her, were gone. Quote unquote, while I was lying on the floor, she says, I understood that when I was asleep, prior to cockroach or foot, prior to any thoughts, prior to any world, there is nothing. In that instant, the 4 questions of the work were born. The work is her seminal contribution to self-inquiry. So she felt intoxicated with joy. The joy persisted for hours, and then days, then months, and then years. When she went home, her children, who had lived in fear of her outbursts, could barely recognize her. Her eyes had changed. The blue had become so clear, so beautiful, her daughter said, Roxanne. And if you looked in, you could see that she was as innocent as a baby. She was happy all day long, every day, and she seemed to be brimming over with love. She spent most of the time silent, sitting for hours on the window seat or out in the desert. Her younger son, Ross, says, before the change, I couldn't look into her eyes. After it, I couldn't stop looking into her eyes. So here is a perfect example of what is called the dark night of the soul and the death and the resurrection of the mind as well. And from that came Katie's life-changing work, which has helped millions of people in the world. So I don't want to, of course, be spending all my time telling you what's in the book. You'll have to read it yourself. But in her book, which is called A Mind at Home with Itself, Byron Katie elaborates on the 4 basic questions that are part of her work. So the work consists of 4 questions and what she calls a turnaround, which is a way of experiencing the opposite of what you believe. So any limiting belief is, of course, a thought that you hold to be true. And here are her 4 questions. Number 1, is it true? Is the thought that is limiting me, or the limiting belief, is that thought true? Number 2, can you absolutely know that it's true? Once again, can you absolutely know that it's true? Number 3, how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? And number 4, who would you be without the thought? And then she turns it around to the opposite. And she then shows how this is how you free yourself from the conditioned mind. Over the years, so many times I've told you that every situation, every circumstance, every event, every relationship is a projection of the conditioned mind. And Katie very elegantly says in her book, the mind can never be controlled. It can only be questioned, loved, and met with understanding. So once again, the mind can never be controlled. It can only be questioned, loved, and met with understanding. Okay, so I'll elaborate on this, but in the meanwhile, I suggest you go out and buy this book, and you'll get a lot out of it, and you will return to your original place, which is holy, which is whole, which is healed. Now, give me 15 seconds to fulfill my obligation to Facebook, and I'll be right back and share with you some of my own insights. So in the 15-second break I could see a lot of your comments, and a lot of you have already pre-ordered the book from Amazon and other places. Thank you for doing that. This is a great book. It's called A Mind at Home with Itself, Byron Katie. And now let me share with you my own tradition on the deep understanding that comes with self-inquiry. The deep understanding that comes with self-inquiry. And that deep understanding is that fundamental reality, which is you and me and all there is, all existence, fundamental reality, all existence. By existence, I just mean that which exists. In its essential state is formless. It has no form. And being formless and boundaryless, it is infinite. Number one. Number two, it is of the nature of awareness. It is of the nature of consciousness. Number three, in order to experience itself, that awareness, which is formless, dimensionless, eternal, infinite, spaceless, timeless, in order to experience itself, it has to do so through experiencing itself as both the subject and the object of experience. So, awareness, formless, dimensionless, spaceless, timeless, splits itself into the subject of experience and the object of experience. And so every experience requires, in that split, three aspects. One is that which we call the experiencer, the observer, the seer, that which we call the process of experiencing, which is the seeing, or that which we call observing, and that which is called observed, that which is observed, the object of observation. But this three, awareness, knowing itself essentially as those three, as the seer, as the seeing, as the seen, the scenery, as the observer, as the observing, as the observed. And this experience happens in the form of sensations. Sensations, you sense experience. Sense perception, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. In other words, excitations of awareness in the form of sounds and forms and colors and shapes and textures and tastes and smells. It also happens in the form of likes and dislikes, which turn into all kinds of feelings and emotions, and then images, imagination. All experience is essentially that: sensations, sense perceptions, feelings, emotions, and the interpretation of experience, which we call thought, and then imagination, and from that, creativity, everything else. Now, as human beings, we give labels to our experiences. So if I asked you, what is this? You'd say it's a hand, but actually it's a shape and a form on the level of seeing. It's a sound as this experience, it's a texture, it's a taste, it's a smell. And the human construct is, it's a hand. The human construct, this is a body. The human construct, this is a book. The human construct, there is a universe. So anything that we can give a name and a form to, anything that we can give a name and a description to is a human construct. Unlike other species, which are also species of consciousness, we are an amazing species of consciousness because we have the ability to create constructs. And those constructs are also creations of consciousness, but these constructs, when they become human, they become very refined. So, anything that we call a gluon, a particle, an electron, an electromagnetic field, gravity, space-time, causality, a body, a mind, the universe, these are all modes of description to modes of knowing. And the knowing is, of course, the knowing element is the fundamental activity of awareness that modulates itself, excites itself, and expresses itself as sensations, sense perceptions, images, feelings, thoughts, and everything that we call experience. So the word mind, the word body, and the word universe are human constructs. But all there is awareness, and awareness is formless, dimensionless, timeless, eternal, infinite. Its essential state is Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means truth, Chit means awareness, and Ananda means eternal bliss. That's who you are. That's who I am. Sat Chit Ananda. And extreme joy. And the peace that passes understanding. But being humans, we have created a human universe, and we think that's what there is. The reality is that the universe we experience is a human universe, and through the constructs we are able to make amazing technology. For example, the technology that you and I are sharing right now, so we can have this conversation. And the internet, space shuttles, intergalactic probes. We can send the construct that we call body-mind in another construct called a spaceship to another construct called the moon. Amazing, right? So we are almost godlike creatures who, by mapping out experience, have created the ability to navigate experience. We have created the human universe. But at the root of it all, you are that universe. A spaceless, timeless, dimensionless being experiencing itself as form and phenomena. That form, the interpretation of form, we call matter. The interpretation of phenomena we can also see as our mind, because it's our conditioned mind that is projecting the experience of that which we call reality. But at the root of all these conditioned minds, at the root of all these species of consciousness, there is only being, and being is Sat Chit Ananda, eternal bliss, formless, dimensionless, eternal love, truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, and extreme joy. Extreme joy. So, somebody just asked me why so many angry people in the world. Well, disconnection creates anger and resentment and hostility. He says it's a stage of development, and actually it's also from the construct that I am separate, that I am a person. But in the deeper reality, even the person is a construct. Even the person is a construct. Because when you say I'm a person, there's no continuity to a person. You were a baby, you were a teenager, a young person, an old person. The person can't be grasped. It's an intermittent stream of sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. A thought can't be grasped. A person can't be grasped. Anything that we call physical reality is just an intermittent, pulsing stream of perceptions. Can't be grasped. Reality cannot be grasped. The past cannot be grasped. The future cannot be grasped. And that which we call now, the present moment, cannot be grasped because it's over as soon as it's born. So in the deeper reality, there's no such thing as a person. You say, oh, I'm the same person I was when I was 10 years old or a 5-year-old. But were you? You had a different body, a different mind, different emotions, and different personality. So there's no such thing as a person. The continuity is in being. Being is the awareness in which the person is a process. Being is the presence, the awareness, the consciousness in which the person is a process. So let me leave you with a few points in the end. Number one, everything that you call everyday reality, all situations, all circumstances, all events, all people, all of that experience that's happening right now in your life is a projection of the conditioned mind. Number one. Number two, the real you was never born and is not subject to birth and death. Okay, birth and death are constructs based on the construct that you're a body-mind in a container of space-time and causality that you call the universe. But the real you is the timeless being, timeless awareness, in which observing and observation appear and disappear in an eternal now. Number three. The real you is also timeless, spaceless, dimensionless. I've already said that, but worth noting again. And finally, if you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, if you can think about it, if you can conceptualize it, if you can imagine it, if you can touch it, it's not real. By real, I mean it's an impermanent, evanescent, transient appearing and disappearing of excitations of the self. Vikal says, why are we here? I'll answer that. So, if you can touch it, taste it, smell it, imagine it, conceptualize it, define it, describe it, it's not real. By real meaning, it's just a temporary, evanescent, it's a temporary, ephemeral, transient arising and subsiding of your own being, which is formless. Formlessness takes form and phenomena, but form and phenomena cannot be grasped. Only there is presence, eternally and now. And now is not a moment in time. Now is the awareness, non-local, our true identity. The self of the universe, which is also the self of you and me, or that which we call you and me. Once again, the book is called A Mind at Home with Itself, Byron Katie, with Stephen Mitchell, and it's worth reading simply because her method of inquiry, is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? Who would you be without that thought? And you'll see the thoughts then, and sensations, and sense perceptions, and feelings, and images, they're all intertwined. They're all intertwined. They're all entangled. If you get rid of that thought, then it changes your perception of who you are and what the world is. Take care, my friends, and remember, this is a good book. You'll benefit. I enjoyed it thoroughly as well. Thank you.